My name is Barry Thompson. I'm the owner of the Fairfax Football Academy. I train 80 to 100 quarterbacks weekly, and I'm also a high school football coach. We have quarterbacks at all levels of football, at different levels at college. We have about 25 or 26 guys currently playing college football, another 50 or so that are playing high school football, another 30 between middle school and youth. And I thought it'd be interesting for parents and for players to interview some of these quarterbacks at different stages. And we have Daniel Lipovski with us, who is currently at Lafayette College. And Daniel is a Lake Braddock guy from Fairfax, went to the University of Delaware, hit the portal, and is going through his first spring session with Lafayette. And we'll talk about that stuff later on. But Danny, thanks for joining us. And I want to just start in the beginning. Are you a Fairfax guy, or did you move into the area?
Nah, I was born outside of Austin, and then I moved to Burke, technically, not Fairfax, when I was young. I was about 5,
Six,
6.
6 years old. So
So
you have
five
that
kindergarten, around kindergarten.
you have that Texas blood in you.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I actually got the hat on today. I
There,
don't
there,
normally wear that.
there we go. Hook 'em. And you're a UT fan. We covered that before.
Yeah, both my parents went there, so
That's great. That's great. And we're going to come back to that because Texas plays an important part in your recruiting. Um, let's say where we start. We met because you had signed up for the winter indoor training program. You were about what grade then?
7th grade.
Seventh grade. And you were
Sure.
playing FCYFL football then?
Yeah, I was a BRYC guy.
Yeah, BRYC guy.
Yeah.
And so we started a relationship then, started training. And then I remember, I don't know if you remember this or not, but you had a pretty memorable game, youth game, with another quarterback, Nate Hamrick. I remember both sets of parents were marking. Do you remember the game? It had been BRYC a long time ago. Do you remember it at all?
What team was he on? S
He must have been
SYC?
SY.
SYA?
Yeah,
Yeah, we went after it with those guys for a while when I was in middle school.
toe to toe. And then from there, you move into Braddock, and Doc is over there. And Braddock had a reputation already of kind of producing a lot of quarterbacks. There were guys there, and Billy Edwards is there when you arrived. Tell me a little bit about that climb, your ninth grade year, 10th grade year.
Yeah, ninth grade year, there was 2 freshmen. It was me and another kid, and the other kid was actually on JV, and I was on freshman. But that ended up being a good thing because I got to just play the whole year. I didn't have to split time or share anything with anybody, so I got a lot better doing that. And I also was lucky enough, Doc wanted me to dress with the varsity so I could learn from Billy and kind of witness everything he was doing, which ended up being really helpful for me later in my career. Um, Sophomore year is COVID, so nothing really happened there. But what did happen was the other kid who was in my grade that played quarterback. He ended up actually having a football offer before even playing a varsity snap, but then he just decided to stick with basketball. So what have happened there? Who knows? But
That's right. Take me back. What's his name again?
Jamie
Jamie. What's Jamie's last name?
Kaiser,
Yeah, Jamie Kaiser. Remember, Jamie Kaiser was bouncing around. And
yeah,
I just want to bring this up because it came up in another interview that there's a guy that has all the athletic advantages and everything that you're competing against, and you just hang in there. And then suddenly circumstances change, right? Because Jamie did get that offer, right? And he was also a basketball guy. And ultimately, he went basketball, I think, at the end, right?
yep, yeah,
Yeah, he was a guy who came and worked with us just a few times. So you had an important relationship, an early relationship that still goes to this day with Billy Edwards.
yep.
Yeah. And you finally take the reins your junior year. You finally get the keys to the car. And tell me what that year was like.
That was probably the most fun year because it's before all the recruiting, and it's just like a lifelong dream of yours to play for the highest. That's how I think it should be. That's how it was for me. I grew up going to Lake Braddock games. Both my brothers played for them, so it was always a dream to actually be able to play for them. And I remember that first touchdown I threw still to this day. It was like a 4-yard hitch, but like I was so nervous. And as soon as I threw that hitch, everything from there was just it just took off from that. I was comfortable. I was having fun. I was making, great friendships, all that good stuff.
Now, I remember us talking after your junior year, and you're probably one of the first quarterbacks I talked about. Hey, let's go back and look at the film, right? And figure out what you missed, what you didn't miss. Like, let's get into that. And you did that. And I remember I checked in with you after, and you go, and your comment was, "Man, I left so much money on the table." It was the comment that you gave to me.
Yes, sir.
And so that review that you did of the previous season, how much did that kind of inform the performance that you're going to turn in your senior year?
It was kind of mind opening because a lot of times, especially when you're younger and you're in high school and you're just going through it for the first time, you're only making highlights every week and you're just looking at those and those. So to have the advice from you, but then also to um embrace the mistakes and kind of have the humility to look back at the mistakes and not just like close your eyes and skip past them really helped me a lot. And something that stuck with me to this day is like last year after my spring ball, I was looking at what I was missing and my on the run throws weren't great. So I spent like that whole summer getting on the run throws dialed in. So it's still something that carries with me to this day is focusing on what I can improve.
Yeah, and you were doing that today on just minute things, and it's funny, regular part of the warm up when you guys are around, I always make you throw on the run, right? It's sometimes
Yeah.
it's a fundamental thing that you kind of forget, but we start quick game and then we go to that just for that reason. And now I'm going to ask you a question that I haven't asked you, so I don't know the answer to this. But what? Why do you play? What drives you? What kind of motivates you to play?
I think knowing the feeling that I have from being the guy, because I've been there before. The last time I've been the guy was high school, but being the guy where everyone's looking at you for an answer and you have the answers is
Mhm.
just a feeling that's like unmatched for me. So like putting all the work in, that's gonna, ideally one day, God willing, lead to me being there again and having a whole locker room look at me and just look for the answer, me be able to give it through all the preparation and confidence I get through preparation. It's just an unmatched feeling that I don't get anywhere else, in school or social life. It's just one of one.
Yeah, and one thing I want to go to, you have repeatedly, and I've seen it happen in front of me before, and you did it when you were at Lake Braddock. You also have a special feel for when people come up to you or people that are a little not as advantaged as you are. You've done some work in that area, and I've had several of my younger quarterbacks who have attended your games, and they were just out of their world because you took the time to say hey to them. You work with Coach Thompson. That's been a big part of you as a person. That it's more. You're more than just a football player. As football is something you do, you love it, but you seem to have this kind of empathy for other people. Could you talk about that a little bit in your work that you did in high school?
Yeah, I think luckily I had a great dad to show me what it's like to be a good person off the field too, and it's just kind of understanding that when you are in the position that I was in, especially like in high school, getting recruited, a lot of kids are looking up to you. Your words mean more than the regular person's. So if I was to be a jerk to people, then it's gonna hurt more than just the regular guy being a jerk because they see me doing all these other great things. So it's the same thing as if you're gonna be, you know, have the voice that you might have, then you might as well use it in the right way. And I think it's just important to treat everybody the same because not everybody is, as lucky as I am or maybe as gifted as I am, but it doesn't, make me more of a person than anybody. So I think just understanding that was always something I was able to learn from an early age, but then also be able to continue it to today, I guess.
Yeah, and you did some work with some special needs groups too, correct?
Yeah, I still stay in touch with them. Um,
Those
those
are some, those
guys.
are some great pictures, great smiles. And the reason I was so alerted to that is my dad started as a physical education teacher, and then he got his master's in special ed. So when I was younger, I was drug along to different camps and things like that. And then my dad was actually one of the first guys in the country that started a group home for special needs, right? Once you graduate school, where there's services, and this was kind of an independent living situation. So when I saw you kind of interacting and actually enjoying it and them really enjoying you, I was curious where that came from.
Yeah, that started out with my dad was coaching them, and one day he asked me to go to practice, and I went, and they took a liking to me, and I took a liking to them. And I just saw how happy they were every time I showed up, so I tried to keep showing up as much as I could.
You did a great job with it. Now, I want to talk about your recruiting. As much as you were firing on all cylinders, you weren't heavily recruited in the beginning. And I remember sitting down talking to your parents, and I gave you all advice that I give quarterbacks that aren't being recruited, which is to start in a certain area, kind of build a pyramid and go up. And you all did that initially in Texas. You did the same thing, right? In
Yeah.
Texas, you went down. You had a whole approach between Division III, the academic school that you wanted to, and there was a mega camp, right, where you knew people were going to be that you had talked to, and that was the whole strategy. And you did well, but when you come back home, what happens?
Um,
Who gets on you from Virginia first?
what was his? What,
William and Mary. William
William
and
Mary.
Mary.
Yeah. Okay. That's what I
Yeah,
thought, but I don't know.
yeah.
It was
It's
a
a
long
long
time
time
ago.
ago, but I just
Yeah.
to help people understand how that works. You were down
Yeah.
in Texas. You didn't do Virginia camps. You did Texas camps, and all of a
Right.
sudden you're home, and I'm talking to you, and you get, yeah, William and Mary called you up. I'm like, how'd that happen? What people have to understand this recruiting business that when coaches evaluate you, if you wind up in the wrong spot, they're going to pick up the phone and call their friends. So I'm almost certain what happened was you're a Division I quarterback. You go to a D3 camp, and somebody says, "Hey, I got a kid from Burke that's down here. Do you guys know about him?" And like, no. Well, you need to get on him. And
Right.
so, right, and then and you also did something else after William and Mary got on you. Who came in next?
I remember it was like Georgetown, William Mary. Uh,
Well, Delaware entered there at some point, right?
Delaware was first.
They were first before William
Yeah.
and Mary. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, but you're going back and forth, and then you did the other thing that I recommend to people too when it comes to recruiting. If somebody hits you, and at that time, Delaware, William and Mary, Richmond, they're all in the CAA, Colonial Athletic Association,
Yeah.
that you then hit the other schools in that
Yeah.
conference, and you did. And so before you made your final decision, what other CAA schools did you visit?
I visited Monmouth, Rhode Island, New Hampshire, William and Mary, obviously. Maybe a couple more I'm missing, but
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
a lot of
You got
CAA
the
schools.
right. And then from that, it over time it became easy to make the decision. You decided on Delaware.
Yeah.
Okay. Now you get off to a great start at Delaware. They're loving you, right? You travel as a freshman. Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes,
Right.
sir.
Travel to Penn State.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Got in with Happy Valley. Yeah. Got in.
Yeah.
So things are going great. And then we come into the second year. And is it the second year or later the first year? Get a little bump in the road.
It was halfway through my freshman fall.
Okay. So you get a little bump, a little injury.
Yeah.
And there's a little changing of the guard, kind of. We won't get into details. But because of that and the way that played out, missed an opportunity at the end of your freshman year actually playing some playoff games, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So now you have to come back and really fight your hind parts off. And you do. You do. You have a great winter season, great spring. And then how did you grade out from there?
Yeah, spring ended up being really good for me. Starting off with 0 reps first practice, coming off that injury recovery, and ended up going out with the 2s at the spring game. So it was a good journey, good climb. And then from there, I felt really good about it, about what was going to happen in the future. And I had a good summer session. We had, you have in college, you have June and July to work out, and you'll throw about 2 days a week. But it's, the coaches can't be out there with all the NCAA rules. But workout wise, good. We started, I'm developing into a leader. Started leading the team in certain metrics that they track us in with the GPSs, like
Right.
hardest working on most of those practices. And then I felt pretty good going into camp, and so that's
Okay.
where that was
And
going to.
then there's another change that happens because Delaware is going to move from the FCS to FBS,
Yeah.
right? And there were different kids that were coming in, and all of a sudden you find yourself sandwiched, correct?
Yeah, kind of,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
You got, and this can happen. There were 2 guys that were in front, right, who were just kind of immovable objects, had nothing to do with your work. Like you said, you let them in the work. You showed over and over again you could climb once you would take whatever they gave you and make good on it. And then you have these guys behind you, and you're sitting there, and it's a tough deal, right? You come up, and it's like, okay, what's going to go on here? How's this going to play out? And could you walk me a little bit through your your decision making, your discussions, and then we'll talk about once you hit the portal. But getting to that point.
Yeah, I think I actually, well, even though my last year in the fall was the worst, I guess, like, progression or outcome, I think it was the best season I've ever had for me mentally because I figured out how to play successfully through adversity. So I think that the beginning of that year, I come out of camp as the 3, um, and we have a bye week. And during that bye week, I'm telling myself I have to be perfect and I have to really jump the ladder here. And because during bye weeks in college, it's the starters kind of get breaks. They're not getting a lot of reps. So
Right.
I'm telling myself all these things I have to do, and I ended up having the worst week of practice I've ever had.
Mm.
And so then that ended up affecting me later on. But what I found later on through the season was being able to focus on what you can control and not
Yes.
anything exogenous that has nothing to do with you.
Right.
And also being okay with making mistakes. Once I started not being scared I wasn't, at one point I was just trying to place the ball. At that point, I just didn't really, you know, worry about failing anymore. I just started ripping it and playing one play at a time. There's times in my freshman year where I would make a mistake and really fall back on it and lean on it. And it's like, cool, whatever, man, you made a mistake. But once I learned that it just doesn't matter anymore and you have opportunity, and what are you gonna do with that next opportunity is when I started to really make steps as a player.
Yeah, it's funny. I've talked to Noah about it, Noah Kim, who we'll have on too. And he talks about this point where he got to where he just stopped comparing himself to everybody. Like if
Yeah.
he saw somebody make a throw, he just stopped wearing the I got to make the name throw. He just focused 100% on the play that he had and being 100% ready to just execute that play as best he could.
Yeah.
Let's go into this just one more. I want to say, when you're not getting repetitions and you know the rep scheme when you go into practice, okay, and I assume they're giving you the call sheet before you go out. Yes, did you guys get the call sheet?
Not during camp, but not during season, really.
Right. So during camp, so the call sheet drops. You know the rep scheme, and you can kind of see where you are for the most part. Sometimes that'll fluctuate, and they'll suddenly say, "Get in." How did your mental approach to those few reps change over time? Because I know at first you're gonna be like, I can't get any reps. So how did you evolve to, okay, this is my rep. This is what I'm going to do with it.
I think understanding that every person on the team has a role is how I kind of was better off with that, because once I learned to embrace my role and not just complain and compare myself like Noah's kind of talking about to the guys above me or below me, once I learned to just embrace that, all right, I have 8 reps today, I get to do these reps. Like I just saw it as a privilege. I saw it as like an opportunity. Like I was grateful for every rep. That's when I started doing better. And also when I wasn't when I wasn't getting any reps, even if I thought I should be, I was paying attention instead of like looking at them like, oh, I would have been doing that better. I was just like, okay, like I saw this coverage, maybe I would have done this, maybe I wouldn't have, but I was still just locked in every rep. I wasn't just head down, pouting, kicking my feet. So knowing how to have the same mentality during your reps as when you're not getting reps is really what helped me. Because when it was time for me to go in for somebody, if they messed up at the end of last year, someone was messing up, they put me in, and I finished the rest of that week of practice because I was ready. I wasn't pouting or anything like that.
Yeah, and I saw that. I came up. There was a day where I saw you. There was you had a spring game on a Friday, I think it was, and I came up on a Thursday. Yeah, Thursday. And it was a really kind of strange practice. And then I remember I drove from there and went down and saw Billy in the afternoon. But I remember I'm watching the rep scheme, and I'm kind of watching. You were to the point where you're going against the clock. You were at -30. There's a minute 45. We need a touchdown, or there's a minute 30. We need a field goal. And I'm watching the ones and the twos going. I'm watching you tag along, and I'm wondering when you're going to get in the rotation. And it was like the second or third rotation of the ones and twos. Suddenly you go in, right? And so I'm being a fanboy on the sideline, and you moved it up to midfield, and right about midfield, my kind of instincts kicked in. You were on the left hash, and I could see that the ball was going to go to the field, just the spacing and everything else. And I look up and I see the boundary safety kind of creep over, and I'm telling you, I was like a mom or a grandma. I go, oh no, they're going to get a boundary blitz. My boy hasn't played. They're going to get him. But you actually knew exactly what was coming off the boundary. You baited them. I think it went to the back, and the ball went like 30 yards downfield to the high red zone. It was. I thought it was a great play. Great play. So I got to witness some of that of you being ready to execute. All right, so you have the Delaware thing. You're good. You get to this point where you got to do some evaluation after the season, where you are in the program, and we talked about that. You could have stayed, but it looked like the pecking order. It might have been your senior year before you got on the field. You were cool with it. You liked the people. You liked the school, that part. But if you were going to move, maybe now was the time to kind of test those waters to do that. Now, the process that you went about internally was kind of unique. That doesn't always happen to every place. Can you walk me through that? Talking to WIC coach, talking to the head coach, what was said, that type of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I was very happy there. That was a great school, great program. Like the coaches, it was a good time there. But I also was just like, it was like year in and year out of putting in a lot of work and not really thinking that maybe it was just the right fit for me or something. There was just things that were happening that, you know, without trying to have a biased perspective lens, it was just kind of just didn't make sense. So I brought that up with the coaches and in a very mindful and respectful manner.
Yeah.
And I was basically just talking to them about the season and what's happened so far. And they were just kind of like, you know, you got two guys ahead of you. One of them's got a year. One of them got 2 years left. So I wouldn't have been competing until my 5th year at the time.
Right.
Really competing. And they were just like, you know, I talked to my head coach. He was like, you know, we don't do this, but a lot, but we'll let you go out and peek out things and see if you like something. But if you don't find anything, you can come back because, you know, you've been a good teammate this whole year. You never did anything wrong. You did everything we asked you to do. It just hasn't worked out. And so if you want to go out and see what's out there for you, go ahead. And they were supportive and even making phone calls for me to try to help me out and stuff.
That was amazing because that doesn't always happen in the portal, and that is a testament to the things that we talked about, the kind of person you were in high school and you still are to this day, that coaching staff thought so much about you that, hey, if you want to go test the waters, we'll bring you back. We still want you part of the program if you decide to stay. But at the same time, they understood that you needed to go explore this opportunity to go play, right?
Yeah.
All right, now, something else that was kind of unique, I think you did too. You had kind of kept track of the people that recruited you initially out of high school. Yeah. And so go ahead. Explain that, how that played into when you hit the portal.
I would just say that, especially if you're a kid getting recruited, all these coaches have either played with each other or coached with each other pretty much. Like every coach that I've talked to knows at least 2 or 3 other coaches that also I've talked to. So it's just important to carry the same relationship you'd have with Alabama as you would with Division III because you just never know how things are going to shake out. So luckily I got that advice from you, Coach Doc, Billy, is like, no matter where a school is or what the school is, like treat them with respect and have an open ear and open mind. And so I did that through my recruiting process in high school, so that when every time I told a school I was going to Delaware out of high school, I gave them a phone call, thanked them for everything, and just was genuine with them. And so that translated well for me when I got into the portal in college, just because these guys remembered like that I gave them that phone call, that I gave them the time of day, and that I was a kid that wasn't just blowing anybody off or too big for anybody. It was just they remembered that. And so they were also able to, like I said, every coach that recruited me in the portal coached with some of my coaches at Delaware, or some of them played with them. So they all know each other.
Yep.
They hear everything. So.
And I'll just dovetail on that too, because I try to explain to young parents, players that are coming up, that coaches have to know each other, because I think Coach Prime said it. There's only 2 moves in coaching. You either get elevated or terminated. And when you get terminated, right, and you get terminated for any reason, it doesn't have to be a losing record. They can just be somebody at the top wants to make a change, and they make the change, or somebody does something goofy. They hold the head coach accountable for it, and then the whole staff has to go. And at that point, coaches need to scramble and figure out where they're going to be next, and they rely on friends to do that. And if you don't have those friendships in the coaching game, when that happens, you're out. So they do learn to to help each other. They at the same time they compete. And the other thing that you mentioned, they're human too, and they prefer to work with talented players that are good people rather than talented players that are pricks. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah,
And
sure.
just common courtesy type things means a lot because they're human too. All right,
Yeah.
so you hit the portal and you get it down to some two tough choices because there's a little lifestyle, kind of thing, maybe heading south and we can go hunting, go fishing and jack up the truck and put on some Hank, or we can go up north and look at some life situations. So walk through a little bit of that decision as it came down to the end.
Yeah, that was a super tough one. Both schools had different things that were good about them, and both of them have recruited me out of high school. The coach at Tennessee Tech was at New Hampshire, and the coach at Lafayette recruited me a little bit to Lafayette when I was in high school, so I knew both of them. I took a visit
And
to
by the
both.
way, he was at Monmouth.
I
When
think
you were
he
in
was at Lafayette when I was in high
Oh,
school.
when you're in high
He
school,
was
yeah,
he was at Monmouth at one point in time.
right. But the comp is he had coached Tony Muskett at Monmouth,
Yeah.
and so as you know, coaches do a lot of comps, right?
Yeah, and
And
I called Tony.
yeah, yeah,
Luckily I had his phone number.
yeah,
But yeah, the decision had to do more with the overall factor after school.
yep.
For me, that's what really came. What's really what it came down to was that Lafayette was the Patriot League. You know, it's like a top 50 school, and the other school that was recruiting me was like 400th, and
Yeah.
so I just knew one day football is going to be over. What's going to have me in a better situation to do what I want after college and not just be stuck hunting around, scrambling around.
Yeah,
So.
you can hunt in Pennsylvania. You can hunt.
Yeah, and there's a bunch of stuff, but
Yeah, there is.
I thought that the coaches that I liked both of them, but
Yeah, they're
the
good
coach that
staffs.
yeah,
Because
both of them were really cool.
you had a good comp the other way too, because that crew had coached at OU with Heineke, and so
Yeah, so
size wise, go ahead.
that was really enticing, and their
Yeah,
offense was very similar to Delaware's, and
yeah,
everything lined up, but it just was if I wasn't playing there and I was just a student there, what would my value really be, I guess,
right.
when I know I could be at a different
That's a
place.
good question because at the end of the day, right, you go through these things of picking about. Well, you come out of high school, you want an offer and this type of thing, and you're kind of excited and you kind of judge a little bit. But now with a little bit of maturity, now you start to think, okay, I can do these football situations. But you asked a great question that everybody should ask: if football stops for me here, am I going to be okay? Right?
Yeah,
Am I going to like this place? In your case, is it going to give me what I need post college? Right? That's a great question to ask because, as you've kind of highlighted here, football gets tough at all different levels. At some point, it's going to get tough, and if you're in a bad place around people you don't stand it, it's really miserable.
right.
Um, Something we skipped over, and we'll kind of close this off. You were a multi-sport athlete in high school, so you did football, you did baseball, and you ran track. Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and I bring that up because parents that are watching this, as you go higher up in football, you'll find two strong correlations: football and track. Not that track's not a sport, but specifically football and track. And then you'll find multiple sport athletes, right? So usually football, wrestling, basketball, and then that football track cluster is another whole cluster, almost as big. Kids that only play football, you do find them, but it's a much smaller population. So for anybody out there that's thinking about this, diversify a little bit. I like that in your background, you had both the team and the individual experience because that end of when you're out in the track there by yourself and it's just you,
Yeah.
it's a little bit different feeling, right? Either
It's
you get out of the box, or
nerve-wracking.
you don't. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Very nerve-wracking. It was more nerve-wracking than football. That's
Yeah,
what it was.
it's a good experience for everybody coming up.
Yeah.
All right. That's really, and we'll probably tap into you. I'll see you during the spring. I'm trying to make my travel plans to get up to Easton and see Coach Sejour and Coach Trox. So we'll see you soon. We'll be on the field tomorrow.
Yes,
I
sir.
want to thank you for sitting in and doing this for me. And folks, I have Danny Lipovski. Danny, thanks for joining me.